What the happened in Super Bowl XXIV? It's January 28th, 1990, and the Superdome in New Orleans is packed to the rafters for a matchup that looked like an absolute dream on paper. In one corner, you had the San Francisco 49ers, the reigning champions, looking to cement their status as the definitive team of the decade. Led by Joe Cool, operating Joe Seifert's surgical West Coast offense, the Niners were a finely tuned sports car, blending precision passing with an elite defense. They entered the Dome as 9-point favorites and were fully prepared to defend their crown. Across the field stood the Denver Broncos. This team was essentially a one-man superhero movie, dragged back to the big game almost entirely by the magic of quarterback John Elway. Under head coach Dan Reeves, Denver boasted the league's #1 scoring defense, but their offense was completely dependent on Elway making a miracle happen when everything broke down around him. They were desperate to finally shake the choker label after losing 2 Super Bowls earlier in the decade. It was the ultimate test. A perfectly oiled machine against a legendary playmaker on a mission for redemption. The Broncos received the opening kickoff, but a couple of rocket balls missed wide of the mark from Elway, and on 3rd and long, Charles Haley'd trip him up, and they'd end up booting it away. Montana and the offense wasted 0 time establishing their dominance. He orchestrated a beautiful rhythm-heavy drive with plenty of help from Roger Craig, spreading the ball around before finding Jerry Rice on a shallow crosser in the red zone, and the GOAT bounced off a big hit in the secondary for a quick 20-yard strike to put San Francisco up 7-0. Denver tried to punch back immediately with Elway shoveling it ahead to Bobby Humphrey to get the Broncos moving into Niner territory, where Humphrey ripped off a few more great runs, but the drive stalled out as Elway continued to miss, not quite looking himself. David Treadwell came out and split the uprights from 42 yards out to cut the lead to 7-3, keeping themselves in it momentarily. On the next drive, Denver's top-ranked defense stood tall, hounding Montana on 3rd down, forcing him to throw it away, getting the ball back for their offense near the 50, where Humphrey had the ball jarred loose, tumbling right back to the Niners, and cue the avalanche. Smelling blood in the water, Montana went right back to picking the Broncos' top-ranked defense apart. He marched San Francisco down the field with a flurry of shot plays, highlighted by a dot to Rice coming over the middle on the post, before dropping a beautifully placed ball over the defensive end's head to Brent Jones, who'd spin into the end zone and put them up 2 scores now, 13-3, with Kofor missing the extra point. Another impotent possession for Denver ended with a punt, and once again San Fran put together another masterclass. The drive featured fullback Tom Rathman, with Montana looking for him underneath on passing downs, letting him get downhill after the catch, and they'd spam it to him on fullback dives at the goal line, and he'd bulldoze his way in through a mountain of bodies for a 1-yard touchdown. Extra point was good this time. The Broncos had to be completely shell-shocked at this point. Both offenses stalled out nearing the end of the first half, with both teams exchanging punts for a while until San Fran would receive inside the 2-minute warning for one final drive. The clock was ticking down, but everything seemed to just click for Montana, who executed a flawless 2-minute drill, capped off by a pump fake and a 38-yard rainbow to Jerry Rice, who slid behind the safeties for another score, and they'd go into the intermission 27-3, and the vibe in the stadium was feeling less like that of a football game and more like that of a public execution. Well, that's when the Denver Donkeys talked things over at half and came out a completely different team. Psych. Their defense held up once again, stuffing Rathman on 3rd down, getting the ball back for Elway again, who'd chuck it to the lurking linebacker Michael Walter with a guy in his face. Montana looked for who else but Jerry Rice again, who'd get walloped into the end zone for a 28-yard score. Rice's 3rd of the day, pushing the score to 34-3 with almost a half of football still remaining. The nightmare continued on Denver's next drive. The running back duo of Humphrey and Sewell got them near midfield, where Elway overthrew his guy by a country mile, and the errant throw floated right to cornerback Chet Brooks, snatching it for a pick, taking it into Denver territory. Total capitulation. Montana almost instantly capitalized again, play faking on 2nd and 10, hitting John Taylor for 35 yards on the deadly post route to go up 41-3, and with that throw, Joe Montana hadn't just broken the Broncos, he set a new record with 5 passing touchdowns in the big game, a record that would stand until his backup and eventual successor Steve Young broke it in Super Bowl XXIX. Denver managed to get a single consolation prize on their next drive. Humphrey broke loose into the open field on a routine zone run, gaining a full head of steam, eventually getting knocked down at the 15. They narrowly averted another disaster as Elway's throw for in the end zone was ripped away by Bill Romanowski, but he'd get flagged for PI, and Denver's offense would get escorted to the goal line. Elway showed some of that old-timey grit on 3rd and goal, going around the line on the QB draw, shaking two pursuers and diving his way into the end zone to finally put a touchdown on the board, 41-10. San Francisco wasn't done playing with their food, though. To end the third quarter, the Niners went right back to their physical, soul-crushing ground game. Tom Rathman and Roger Craig chunked the Denver defense to pieces, kicking off the fourth quarter with Rathman barreling into the end zone, making it 48-10. Another Denver drive ended horrendously as Elway was stripped from behind trying to scramble, and Daniel Stubbs nearly scooped it and scored it, barely getting stopped at the goal line, where Roger Craig slipped through a gap and into the end zone to run up the score one last time, 55-10, with almost an entire quarter left to play. The rest of the game was pretty uneventful, guys, so I won't subject you to it. Both starting QBs were pulled from the game, and both teams didn't do much, just running down the rest of the clock, where Steve Young scrambled for the game-sealing first down, and they'd hop in victory formation. Final whistles blew with the scoreboard reading a humiliating, unimaginable 55-10. The 49ers hadn't just won a championship, they'd just executed the most flawless, high-velocity blowout we've ever seen in the big game, with Joe Montana becoming the undisputed GOAT of the era, and John Elway's Super Bowl choker allegations were looking worse than ever, and the Broncos were left to just pick up the pieces of a ruined legacy, while San Francisco claimed their fourth trophy of the decade, cementing themselves as an untouchable, historic football dynasty.